The CZ457 has been probably the most popular rimfire rifle sold in America for a ton of different reasons, and I've got a ton of different videos that talk about this rifle. It comes in at a stellar price point. It performs with a factory barrel. There's a ton of aftermarket support out there for these, from triggers, chassis, the barrel like you see here. This is a Lilja pre-fit barrel, and as you've seen on the channel before, you can even go as far as having one custom built by Kenny at Desert Precision Gunworks. But for some reason, time and time again, I see guys start with this rifle in its stock form, eventually upgrade the trigger, the chassis, the barrel, and then eventually this rifle finds itself in the corner of the gun room or the back of the safe, and it's not being used as much. And I see this very, very commonly in PRS and NRL 22 shooters as they progress. And it got me thinking, well, why is it that we're ditching the CZ platform, and what do the Voodoo, Rim-X, and other 700 short action clones have that this rifle doesn't? And I don't think it's a matter of accuracy, because we've shown before, even the smaller pre-fits have pretty stellar accuracy. I think it has to do with the way I'm putting this rifle down on the bag right now, and that is towards the center. That's because this is a very hard system to balance when you have a very thin profile barrel and a very light action. It tends to make these rear heavy. So if we were going to balance this like we had a mag in, like if we had to run this on a prop with a scope, it would sit here, and obviously that's not going to work. Even when you go to an ACC and you have the smaller profile barrels, it is possible to somewhat get it balanced, but it doesn't compare to the rifles that eventually replace it. So when we see the CZ457s being put up, usually they are being swapped out for something like this. Now this is my Bergara. This is obviously a 700 short action clone, and as you can see, this balances. It's got a big old barrel on it. It's an MDT ACC. The Voodoo, the Rim-X, these are typically what replaces CZ. And like I said, I don't think it's the action. I don't think it's the accuracy. I don't think it's the aftermarket support. I think it's this right here, because when you get serious in NRL and PRS 22 and you want a rifle system that is going to work as hard for you as you're working at the sport, a lot of people find themselves right here in the 700 short actions because of this. You come to a prop, you put your bag down, you put your rifle on it, it weighs upwards of 20 pounds. It's balanced forward of the mag well, so you really don't have to give this rifle input. And really, when you're coming from a more traditional rifle, this is basically like a cheat code, because they're just more stable and they're easier to shoot. And I want to introduce you into what I think is the solution. And yes, this is a CZ457, and yes, it has a big old barrel on it. And yes, it is sitting on the bag supporting itself. Now I've got a ton of room to add more weight to this, but just the barrel, the one set of weights, and this is in an ACC, this is balancing really, really well. Now, and this weighs pretty much the same as my Bergara, Rim-X, and Voodoos. It feels almost exactly the same. I'm gonna go over this whole thing in quite a lot of detail, but quickly I will tell you, this is a Modacam custom rifle. This is a pre-fit, so this is gonna be a 1.18 inch diameter. This is a Moeller barrel, minus 24 inches, 16 twist, 8 groove. First things first, I know you guys are dying to know the most important thing: will it shoot? Okay, so if you made it this far in the video, I know that you are really a CZ nut like me, so we are really gonna get into the details of this entire build, and I'm gonna talk about exactly why it is I'm actually excited about this and why I think this is different. So the traditional CZ 457, I'm gonna tell you, you can get these to shoot exactly like this. This isn't doing something that a Lilja or even some of the factory barrels I've seen that are really good shooters can do. But this is not going to balance. So if you're not an NRL 22 or PRS shooter or someone who wants a heavy balance rifle, then the things that we're going to talk about going forward with this are probably not going to interest you a whole lot. So hopefully, if you were just here to see CZ shoot groups, you got your fix on that, and I'm glad you came and watched. But this next part is really going to be for the PRS and NRL guys who are really looking to have a premium rifle setup that just happens to be a CZ. So first things first, let's talk about the chassis. That was the first and biggest decision when I had to build this rifle, and obviously it's in an MDT ACC, and that's for a very good reason. This is a 1.18 inch pre-fit barrel from Modacam, and the only chassis that are going to allow you to just slip this in are going to be an ACC and a KRG Bravo. Now, there are other options like the Element 4.0. This is a great chassis, but it's only going to allow for about an inch. Now, you could clearance this out really easily. It's not going to be a big deal. If you're a manners guy, you could clearance that barrel channel out really easily. You know, if you've got a favorite chassis, it's likely going to work, but I'm telling you, for drop-in fitment, it's going to be KRG Bravo and the MDT ACC. Now, that is not the only reason I went with the ACC. If we look again at the Element 4.0, and I love the XLR chassis, if we kind of stick these up next to each other here, look at the difference in fore-end length. The ACC is out to here, the XLR to here. Now, when we have a lot of barrel, it's going to help balance it. I still like to have that extra fore-end length so that I can get weight out towards the end. That is going to help you balance it even if you were to go with a 1.1 inch barrel. So, and of course, with everything in rimfire and guns, nothing's perfect. The downside here is the MDT ACC magwell. With an extension, they are ridiculously tight to get in and get the release. Now, I can do it. A lot of you may need to go in here and clearance this if you got a bigger finger, or just run a 10-round mag, but I know, you know, we want to run 12-round mags. They work for me. I can get them out, but if you got big fingers, then you're either going to have to clearance this out or just run 10-round mags, and that does kind of suck a little bit, I'm not going to lie. The next component of this build was the trigger. Now, this is the Timney trigger, and that tiny amount of travel you just saw on the trigger is exactly why it is on this rifle. I love my Timney triggers. They're great triggers. The Jard is out. It is lighter than the Timney, but the Timney has like virtually no movement in it. And for PRS and NRL shooting, where I'm on a bag and things that are tippy and that kind of thing, I like my triggers to have no movement basically, and the Jard has movement, so that was why I went with the Timney. So for the last part of the puzzle, I wanted to bring you guys inside so we could talk a little more in depth about the barrel and why I chose what I chose and what options are out there for you, because ultimately I'm not here to sell you on going one way or the other. There's 100 different ways to skin this cat. So I'm quickly going to talk about the popular options, and then we're going to get into the Modacam pre-fit. So as most of you know, the CZ factory barrels are pretty good shooters, but here we have probably one of the most common upgrades and probably the most common barrel that I run on CZs, and this is the Lilja. And I've had a ton of success with these barrels, and they are really high quality, but they are about a 0.9 diameter barrel. So if weight and balance aren't important to you and you're just looking for accuracy, then the Lilja is a pretty safe bet at around $500 to just buy a pre-fit. Now they come with barrel shims so that you can headspace these yourself. And like I said, these have worked really well for me. Now, of course, there are a ton of other pre-fit options, but the Lilja I think is probably the most popular drop-in barrel and what people have the most success with. So skipping over the Modacam pre-fit for now, if you're looking to do something outside of this, then you're probably likely going to find yourself looking at a full custom rifle from Kenny at Desert Precision Gunworks. But like I mentioned previously in the video, if you were like me a year and a half ago where I was rocking the one CZ rifle, and there was probably no way that I was going to let that rifle out of my sight, and it was the only rifle I had to shoot competitions. Or maybe you're looking at building something up slowly over time instead of dropping a large amount of money, then something like the Modacam Custom Prefit starts to make a lot more sense. Now, this guy is a 1.18 MullerWorks barrel. This is an 8 groove. It is a 1/16 twist, and mine is finished around 24 inches. So this setup is obviously going to come at a premium. This barrel blank before machining basically costs what this Lilja costs. So if you're wondering about price, this is probably going to be in the $800 price range, something along the lines of a Remex prefit. There's a little bit more machining work than you would see in a Remex and a CZ prefit barrel. At the end of the day, what I'm looking at here on the table are all great options. If you're going to go full custom, that's a great option. I can't tell you on this video what's going to be better for you. You need to look at all the options, which luckily for us are plentiful right now for CZs, and decide what's going to fit your needs. I went with this because I was looking for the ultimate do-it-yourself at-home CZ 457 build. We're getting a ton of weight and balance out of this in an ACC that is going to feel and act very much like the Remington 700 short-action clones you can probably see behind me. And to me, honestly, this is going to make the CZ 457 a really viable option to guys who aren't looking to send their rifles off to be custom gunsmith, or maybe just own the one rifle and can't live without it. Because I think we can all agree that the final product here is pretty amazing, and looking at the balance of this guy, it is going to be an absolute joy to shoot in PRS and NRL 22. And down the road, I'll try and get you guys some match footage of this rifle. I'm going to shoot it in some local NRL 22 matches and just see how it does and relive my glory days of the CZ 457. Well, you guys goaded me into it. I was gonna end this like I normally do, but I figured let's grab a couple rounds of this match and let's see if we can end on the smallest two out there as impacts, and hopefully we don't make a fool out of ourselves. That's kind of the easy one. All right, we'll catch you guys on the next one.